All right, welcome everybody. We are live. We are talking today about seal, and we use a lot of seal in the different doors that we build, and we've got some different seals that we use in specific type of frameworks and specific application of doors. And first I want to talk a little bit about what seal can do and what seal can't do. Now, the first thing that I think most people think about when they talk about seal is water resistance, right? Waterproofing. And that's a real challenge on a boat. You want to talk a little bit about kind of how that works and what some of the reasons for that are?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got one of our freestanding glove boxes here, and you can see that we actually have seal that's pressed into the frame. What I would say from a waterproof standpoint, right, this is going to be fairly water resistant. Right, but if you are taking a spray nozzle or it's taking direct spray right through the front opening of this door, this does press against that seal, but it doesn't press up against it like you would see like in the automotive or a window, just because of the nature of the material, right? We press up just hard enough to make a clean contact with that seal, but it's not pressing very hard in order to make sure that water doesn't pool down inside of there. So, if you were to shoot an actual hose or a spray nozzle towards this door, water's not going to be shooting directly in there, but some water could trickle down through the back of that door around the seal and actually get into the box. And, one of the reasons why that would be different is the nature of our material. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I was going to say the big reason why we can't torque it down, because the obvious reason would be, okay, well, make it hit tighter, tons of cars are waterproof, is the nature of the material. It is not super rigid, and that's true of almost all marine materials, whether it's HDPE or of course, which is starboard, or acrylics, is that if you put too much torque on them, especially in the heat, being outside, the material will start to flex. So you take a steel car door, and that can latch and hold really tight against a seal, not unlike this, and we'll talk more about these seals, and that steel door is never going to flex on you. You have no issues with bowing or anything like that. And of course, on the marine side, we don't have that luxury. If we had this holding super, super tight, you would start eventually to see the corners bow out a little bit. And so you're trading out that aesthetic problem of flexing and warping with a little bit less water resistance. So that's a reality. We're going to talk a lot about seal, water resistance versus waterproofing. We don't build anything that we call waterproof. Everything is water resistance. It will help. Now, with that in mind, you want to talk about what we do consider the major advantage of adding seal?
Absolutely. And we've got, this is one thing that I'll show you. When this door closes, it closes real clean. It dampens the sound of closing the actual door itself. But also when you're running the boat, I'm moving this box around, and you can hear, and I'll lift it up so you can't hear. There's no rattle to this at all. You've got a door here that doesn't have seal in it.
Yeah.
The difference of closing, right?
Totally different experience.
You close, I'll close. You can hear there's a little bit of noise dampening there on the actual door.
And this is the rattle. I mean, this is it right here. This is
nothing, right?
Right. So, and really from an expense standpoint, if you're building a door or storage box, seal is relatively inexpensive.
$25.
I think it's a $25 upcharge for a door. So I advise adding seal to every door, again, not for the water resistance, but for the rattle, and it feels more finished.
Right.
This feels more like it was built just maybe in someone's garage, whereas this feels more OEM quality finish. You close the door and it sits nice and flush against it.
Like closing a cupboard without some type of a bumper or a stopper on it, right? You just bang, bang. So that, as well as the rattle, I think that it is a good option to add onto the boat.
So with that in mind, we have two main seals that we use, and these are somewhat new. It's been a couple, 2-3 years that we've used these primarily, and they are rubber seals. And let's actually zoom in a little bit. Let's try to zoom in and see if we can't get a better picture down here at the bottom. Let's pivot and look at those. We have two different sizes. We have one that we recommend when we are using 1/2-inch thick material. Let's try to get me nice and centered here.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Perfect. So we have this smaller one that we recommend when you're using a starboard frame, something like this. This is a return that we have that's cut in the CNC router that would screw to the back of a frame, and this is what your door would hit against, right? So your seal goes right here, and we'll show actually how you install that in this this T-slot here. And this is what we recommend when it's a 1/2-inch thick door panel. whereas this is what we would recommend in a aluminum framework, and we'll look at that when the door is half inch, because the aluminum recess is quite a bit deeper than the gap is, or the recess is for a starboard frame. And they got a little bit convoluted. I'll try to circle back through that again. But another thing I want to show, you want to talk about the T-slot a little bit,
yeah,
and how
absolutely.
that works?
So, keep zoomed in here, and again, I'll put my hands here. You can see at the bottom of this actual seal, there is a little bit of a T here, and it's rigid. And so you're able to, the way we mill into this material, or the way that this extrusion comes, we have a little slot or a groove here that this T-slot goes inside of. So I'll show you how we install that. Basically on our end, I'll get it started here, right? You can see that I'm just pushing one side of this in, and then on camera I'll show you what we're using, right? This is just a standard putty knife, right? We grind the edges of it a little bit. So basically that seal is now down.
And why is that?
Front.
That's just to make it a little bit less sharp, I
Probably
guess, on
sharp
the edge.
so you're not puncturing. I'm going to pull this off camera just to get it started real quick, and I'm just pushing down in that first initial part. But now you'll see that is inside of that groove. So I'm just using this putty knife to work down the frame and press in just that last side of the actual T-slot into that groove. So you can see now that that's secured in there. I'm moving it around. I'm not able to move it. It can pull out, right? So if I give it some oomph, it can come out of that groove, but that's not something that's going to happen unless you're intentionally trying
I think you have to try to do that. And I think once the seal is all the way around a door panel, you're way less likely to be able to do that when you don't have the leverage.
No leverage, right.
So again, you can see this T-slot. Let's see if I can get it to focus. There we go.
I'll reach around you here as well to kind of show where that goes into this groove right here. So you can see that T-slot just fits right into the bottom there of that groove, and we're just working it in poly. Do you want to show them how we would do so that's the install for how we get it into a
King starboard
frame.
door.
Exactly.
Yeah. So aluminum frame is the same idea in that we have a T-slot. Let's see if we can get it. T-slot, face the right way. That is part of the extrusion. And then for the aluminum frame, we generally are able to get a lot of the way via putting just soap and water.
Right.
So it kind of slides in just like we're showing here, and slides down in. Now, as you start to make different turns in the corners, you might need to get out the putty knife again on the aluminum frame.
If it pops out, to force it back in.
Yeah, it just might start to get to be so much friction because you've gone around 2 or 3 different corners that the sliding's not working that well, where you might want to use a putty knife. You do want to be careful with the aluminum powder coat that you're not chipping that.
Sure.
But you can press this into the aluminum frameworks as well.
Okay.
Now, we talk about, could you pull this off if you tried to? You probably could pull it off if you tried to, but you have to really want to. Now you compare that to, say, a adhesive-backed seal, right? Which adhesives on material like starboard or like this powder-coated aluminum certainly would have a much shorter lifespan from how long they would last. So we feel very strongly about the T-slot design and the way we do seal in our different doors.
Lasts a lot longer life out in the field.
Absolutely. So now the main two, like we talked about, are these rubber, and this is really nice because it's able to make really tight turns. Right, and we've got a lot of different doors that the radiuses are not too large. So, but I can make I'm off camera there. I can make a tight turn, and you don't get a lot of kinking and crimping in the seal. And I bring that up because we do have some legacy seals that we've gone away from, and that is the foam-filled seal. Now we still use it in some applications, but for all new prototype parts now, we are using the rubber seal that has it's hollow in the center. And again, the issue is the crimping, right? So when I get too tight of a radius, I start to get some crimping on here, which of course makes it so that it's not making the best contact with the door that it's pushing up against.
Right.
But I do have this style seal in 3 different sizes, so small, medium, and large. And we use this seal for, gosh, probably 15, 20 years, and it holds up really well. This is just an upgrade option because you don't get the crimping in the edge, and we think feels a little bit more like what someone would expect. This is kind of a more designed for windows, whereas this matches the automotive type seal that people are used to seeing on their car doors.
Right. So maybe let's do this, for us to do a quick camera reset, maybe we'll have Justin flip over to the website and just take a quick view of all of our different seals that we offer, and then we can get more into some of our specialty seals. So I think the big thing for us right now is to see how you would navigate to the seal on our site. So Justin, go ahead and help us navigate that, right? So underneath hardware, we're able to go over to the seal section there. And you'll see we have quite a few different ones that, we'll go back, and I've got some of these specialty ones here. So go ahead and click seal for us, Justin. And then, what Andrew talked about, you'll see the top two, right? So the very first two are the T-slot seal that we offer. And then the one down on the bottom is the white one. So again, you'll see some of these other seals that we offer, they're all roughly priced at 30 cents an inch, right? And we have a minimum order of about 120 inches. So, what we'd like to do now is flip back over on camera, maybe cover some of those other specialty seals.
Yeah, let's talk specialty seals. Okay. All right. So you pick one, man. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, first thing to go along with that heavy extrusion that we had for the door, this is kind of like a trim piece, right? So you imagine the front of the actual console door is slamming up against this area here. Well, on the back of it, sometimes there's exposed fiberglass. So on the back of it, we have this little piece of trim. I wouldn't consider it necessarily a seal, but you have this trim piece here that you're able to trim out and frame out the back of that door to make it look nice and clean.
Yep.
Right.
And we've done some bent PVC as well, as an alternative to this. But like you say, it's not a seal. It's it doesn't really have an obvious classification. It looks like a seal. It's a rubber extrusion. But yeah, it's a great way to make it look more finished from the inside of a console door.
Yeah. So the next one is for this medium aluminum extrusion that we're using. There's this seal that just presses into the frame the very same way, where the door, again, not necessarily waterproof or water resistant, but more so that this is used to stop rattle in the door.
So real quick, I'll zoom out for a second and talk about the two extrusions that we build doors out of. We have what we call our medium extrusion, and that is what I have in my left hand here. Mm-hmm. And then I have my heavy extrusion. Actually, zoom in just a tiny bit. Let's see if we can see about the size of them in the profile. Now the heavy extrusion has that T-slot built into it. So that works with our typical seal, and it also has that back closeout seal that we just looked at. But then our medium extrusions is used for a lot of our smaller access doors, where this might be a little bit overkill, right? I mean, this sits a little bit proud, and it also is a big overlap on your fiberglass, whereas this one's quite a bit lower profile if you're looking at it, right? It's not too large.
Right.
So for this medium extrusion, you can kind of show how this presses in. This is just a press-in seal that really, like you say, is not doing anything from a waterproofing standpoint. It's mostly just to keep the contact point from not being either acrylic or starboard up against this powder-coated aluminum. If that just slammed against it,
that's a good point.
You would hear the clank every time. It would rattle, and eventually you'd worry about maybe chipping or marring that powder coat. And I think we have, here we go, actually perfect. So here's a door that we built, and you can zoom back out here real quick. This is a door that uses our medium extrusion. So this is a perfect example of a size door that we would not recommend using a big old extrusion like this. And as we open it, you can see you've got that same press-in seal that rides around the whole outside. But again, if you spray this down with a hose as you're washing the boat down, you will almost certainly get water.
Not as much in a vertical application, but if it were laying flat as like a deck hatch, then of course you're going to get water that leaks around.
Gravity wins.
Yep.
Cool. What else we got over there?
So this is Harry Fin seal. I'll let you kind of talk about this. This is mostly for our sliding cabin entry doors, right? So
again, this being called a seal is using seal a little bit loosely. So we build a variety of bent sliding cabin entry doors. And actually, let's flip back over to the website and see if we can find an example of what we're talking about. So go ahead and go up to the top, search like bent cabin door, and see if we can find one we're talking about. No, those are latches. Let's scroll down. The second page. We're striking out.
Yeah, so we can, maybe on the Harry Finn seal page itself, we may have a picture of how that application works. Let's take a look there.
This is live, guys.
There we go.
There we go.
That's
Boom.
perfect.
Perfect. Okay. And go to, yeah, perfect. So that's a bent door, and this is a door that slides in a track. So typically this seal will mount on the underneath side of the sliding door, and it really just keeps your dust, your insects, it tries to eat up some of that space between, maybe it's a double sliding door where you have a screen door on the inside and a bent acrylic door on the outside, and this sits between them so that you don't get, again, your insects and your dust from going in. This does use the same T-slot, yeah, that's really what it does.
So if you switch back over, Justin, so we can see it on camera. So my question would be, is it kind of the same exact deal where we're milling into the back of that acrylic? You've got this bent sliding door that is an entry door down to the cabin, and we're just milling down and sliding this into that T-slot, right?
Yes, yeah. Now, whether or not, depending on kind of the radius and how it's slid or what you use to slide it, you might need to use the putty knife. But yeah, it's the same idea that it goes into the T-slot and sits between two doors.
And I know we sell a fair amount of this on the site. Is it that people are getting dirty? I mean,
yeah,
random question.
You look at this, right? And this rubber seal is relatively indestructible. I mean, unless something very unique happens, this is probably going to last the lifetime of your boat. Whereas this, depending on what you have happen, it is just a, it feels kind of like hair.
Like a paintbrush, right?
Yeah, maybe it sits in a weird way and kind of gets matted, and now it's not making contact, or maybe it just kind of starts to pull off a little bit.
It's a pretty quick change to keep it clean, right?
Yeah, no, it's not a big deal. Yeah, it's not a difficult replacement. You saw how easy it was to do with the putty knife. But yeah, that's what that is.
Yeah, so last thing we have, this is actually a newer part for us here. This is just hatch tape, right? So not necessarily a seal. A little bit more so, it's kind of like a weather stripping that would go around like a lot of those Lumar, Bomar hatches that are in front of the boat. A lot of the cabin cruisers have these that pop open. Again, just like weather stripping on a door, over time you want to make sure that you seal it. So this is available as well online at Boat Outfitters. And the installation for this is super simple, right? It's just an adhesive back. So you peel up your old weather stripping or your weather seal and then put this down around the hatch. And also, if you have a hatch that you've got some rattle to, the adhesive back's not going to last as long. But if you've got a door that wasn't built by us, or you opted not to get the seal, this would be something that you may want to try inside of the frame of that door to stop some of the rattle. Again, the adhesive's not going to stick to the starboard very long.
So this is actually a great point, because everything we looked at has some tooling associated with it, right? This T-slot works because I'm milling that on my CNC router, to be able to put it in. Same deal where we purchased this extrusion with this T-slot cut in it. Same thing with the Harry Finn seal, where that's milled in the underside of a bent door. They're not really super simple retrofit kind of Band-Aid type parts. This is the exception to that, right? I mean, you could use this just about anywhere. Now, how long it's going to last depends probably on how good you clean it, how much you really put some pressure down, follow the instructions. Don't just peel it off and stick it anywhere. Apply it right. And it could totally serve the purpose you're saying, though. As far as dampening your slam on a fiberglass hatch, or like you say, your Lumar or Bomar. So this is definitely the most like, hey, I have a project, I need some seal, let me get some seal.
Yep.
This is much more specific. So to that point, we do from time to time get the question of, okay, I want to use this, I don't want to use adhesive, I want to do it once and do it right and not have to worry about it peeling off. Is there any way for myself at home to add this seal to a specific spot?
Yeah, I actually had a guy that stopped by the booth, what Andrew's about to show last week here at Fort Lauderdale, and he said, I'm the reason you guys added this router bit to the site.
So I didn't never expect anyone to actually want to do this. But we sell some of them. Now this is the router bit that we use. We use this on our CNC routers, and I'll come up a little bit. You can see it's a dovetail bit, and this bit is what cuts the actual T-slot. It's tough to see there. But this bit cuts the T-slot, and these bits are very expensive. I think we sell it on the website for what is it, about $85?
Yep.
Less than 100, but pushing 100. They also can break. They break more than we wish they would break. Actually, when we use them on our CNC routers, we generally will make an initial pass with a small drill bit so that we hog out all the material for the main cut, and then come behind this, so this is just doing the wing part of the T to eliminate the amount of stress you're putting on this bit. And we would recommend, if you did want to try to do this, you do the same thing as well.
Sure.
So, some of the things you got to think about though is, do you have, I mean, I guess if you used like a real thin old foam seal, maybe there is enough space between your door and your returns to sneak something in there. But you do have to consider there's some challenges even with taking a part that wasn't designed to accommodate some level of seal and trying to cut something and insert seal in there and then hope your door closes correctly.
And doesn't bow it over time.
Correct.
And it takes that flex on. Yep.
So this is what I would consider an advanced option that I'm surprised people do, but I will say that we sell some and we very rarely hear, hey, that just didn't work. Maybe they don't call to tell us it doesn't work. I know. Right. Proceed with caution if you want to try to do it. It's not really something we recommend. If you want to upgrade to a higher end door that has an integrated bulb seal, I think you'll find that the doors are quite inexpensive for a custom door. A door this size, that we showed you with starboard frames would probably be in the $220 ballpark, right? You're spending $80 on a
do all the work
seal
yourself.
and have to do all the work. So I would probably push you to try to consider that if you really wanted to upgrade to bulb seal.
Yeah.
Anything else you can think of?
No, I think we've got a question over there, Justin.
Sure. Matthew asks, which seal should I use for a leaking live well seat on the front of my console?
A leaking live well seat on the front of his console.
Seal. I think it's a typo. So a leaking live well seal on the front of the console. So yeah, I mean, it really depends. A lot of times what we do, we make a lot of those live well lids for the builders. So, over time, different seals have been used. I would imagine that in most cases, this bulb seal is what's going into that live well lid. We're milling into the acrylic and using this bulb seal to seal it up against the fiberglass.
The reality is, though, it depends. You really need to send us a picture, and we'll certainly try to help you. I mean, there's everything from like a lot of live well lids we build sit against a fiberglass recess, right? So, you get some where a boat builder might have put a seal not unlike this, right? An adhesive seal into the landing, or in other cases we might have milled from the bottom, exactly like you're saying, into the live well lid itself.
That's
so
a really good point, that
that
this is sitting in a gutter and that the lid itself doesn't have a seal in it whatsoever.
So my first thing is, let's evaluate if there's an obvious T-slot milled into it, right? If there is, then it's a sizing question, right? I mean, there's really one T-slot that fits all of these. We would need to look at the size, and we would see some of these nice rubber stuff versus some of the older foam stuff, and what size fits your lid. If it's adhesive, then it's probably this.
Yep.
This is probably your only real option. Now, are there multiple sizes and widths of that, or is that the only width that we have right now?
So this is more for like a weather stripping. We actually have, and we do carry here, again, it's not advertised on the site because we don't feel like it's probably the best option for applying it to a starboard, but we do have like a 3M adhesive backed seal that's similar to this bulb seal over here. It's hollow. We have a limited supply of that. If that's
it's so junky. There's a reason why we don't have it on the website. We very rarely use it.
He'll be real.
No, I mean, we do have an adhesive back seal that I have not seen used on any parts, and I have tried to ship it, and the paper on the back peels off. You can't really wrap it. I mean, that's why this is so nice. It's packaged and wrapped in a way that you can actually use it. You don't dry up all the adhesive.
Right.
I don't know if I consider that practical. I was just wondering, I mean, I guess you could take this and
this
potentially...
is more of a foam tape rather than a rubberized, right? So from like a complete immersion standpoint from a live well, I don't know that I would recommend this.
Gotcha.
It's more of like a weather stripping dampener, again, just going under just to prevent some of the water from splashing back up, but not complete exposure like a live well is.
So here's an option for this person who would post this is, we could absolutely take your lid, if you want to take your live well lid off, and we could, if you told me, hey, my live well lid sits nice and flush to my deck, and it's, 1/2 inch thick or maybe 3/4 inch thick, we can take that, you send it to us, we'll digitize the outside shape of it, then we could build it again out of 3/4, maybe mill the outside edge down by maybe a 1/4 inch and integrate a rubber seal all the way around the edge. So, if it was something that was really an issue, that you wanted to spend a little bit of money to make it that much nicer,
Right.
that's definitely an option. Or you can go for this if you want. Give it a go. That's definitely something you could do.
Yep.
Godspeed. What else you got?
That's it.
Is that it? Awesome. Well, I think we covered everything you could want to know about seal. Guys, we'd love to be able to make sure that these are as beneficial for you as possible. I've got a list of topics. Hey, we can talk about this, we can talk about that, but I want to make sure it's stuff that you're interested in and stuff that's helping you. So in the comments or send us a message, let us know what you'd like to see discussed. And then also make sure that you set your reminder. We're doing this every Thursday at noon. So even if you don't think, hey, that's maybe not a topic recommendation, but I want to make sure that I'm here next Thursday at noon because I have a specific question about a specific thing. We kind of envision this being topic-based and driven, and maybe the first 10, 15 minutes are about this topic, but then we'd love for it to devolve into just general
Q&A.
office hours. Yeah, hey, I'm working on this, I need a tackle box, and to that point, when you're watching, feel free to ask any questions as it relates to stuff that we build or otherwise. If we don't know the answer, we'll research it and get back to you, and if we don't build the part, we'll give you advice on who the best person to reach out to is. So with that in mind, thank you very much for your time. Thanks, and have a great day.